Hi there. In this video, I'm going to do another Quicken tutorial, and I'm going to be going over all the top level menus and toolbars that you will see when you start using Quicken. There's a few different toolbars, and frankly, a lot of the features that you access with those toolbars sort of overlap, meaning you can access a feature in Quicken a variety of ways. So I show you how you can do that from each of the toolbars, and then talk about how you can customize the overall menus so that you distill it down to just what you want to see, and have it working the way you want to work. So I think it'll be very helpful for anyone who's starting using Quicken, and will clarify how to get to all the features that you can utilize. Okay, thanks so much. See you in there. I'm Joe DeSanto, by the way. I'm an independent CFO and business consultant. I actually spent most of my career in Los Angeles building a few multi-million-dollar businesses, and I've since semi-retired, and now I help other businesses and individuals manage their money and plan better for their future. So if you're interested in small business, personal finance, and real estate advice, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Hi folks, thanks for joining me in this video. So as I said in the intro, what I wanted to do is just kind of take you through the kind of top level view of Quicken, which really kind of includes the menus and the different ways that you can get to the different features. I made this other video recently that kind of talked about this left bar and how the accounts that go in here sort of organized, like the hierarchy, I guess you could say, of the organization, which frankly is a little confusing. So if you saw that video, seeing these accounts here might seem familiar. I'd recommend you go watch that as well. But obviously, the left bar is a feature in where you can see all your accounts, and is kind of like the quick access to getting into your accounts, and basically seeing essentially what is the check register of the accounts, and entering information. And as you just saw, I switched this to be like a two-line display, so it looks more like a check register. But anyway, beyond that, I kind of want to go through the menus. So if you just set out with Quicken and you kind of created a new file, likely the menus are going to look like this. You're going to see these top level menus here. Below that, you're going to see what's called the toolbar. And then in addition to those menus, you'll have this menu here. Now, truth be told, these three things kind of overlap, and essentially Quicken offers you a variety of ways to get to the same feature. So once you get used to some of these more, kind of designed in menus like this, you might find that. But I thought it would be good to just explain, how they overlap and the differences. Now this toolbar one is kind of familiar in that it's much like you would see in like a web browser or something like that. And the way you can actually, take that on and off if you like is right here, the show toolbar option. Now, I don't like to have that on because I just feel like it's super redundant. However, if you like, icons for your menus, you can use this menu to probably do most everything, but you might want to customize it and add more or less features. And to do that, as you probably just saw, I right-clicked and I hit Customize Toolbar. Now, maybe I should point out here that I'm in Quicken Home and Business, which is only available on Windows, which is kind of a bummer. I'm running it using Parallels, just because I used to have a Windows computer when way back when I started using Quicken. I was always using the Windows version, and then when I got a Mac, I was like, well, I can't switch to Quicken Mac because at the time it was very different. So I set up Parallels on my computer, which I like to have a Windows operating system anyway, so that was cool with me. The Mac version does look quite different, so this video is probably not going to help you that much. And honestly, this hierarchy that I mentioned in the left menu bar here is kind of specific to home and business. So I guess I'm saying that this video is probably most relevant to home and business. Though the features we're going to talk about are in all versions. So anyway, that's the toolbar menu. You can turn that on and off. I like to just turn that off, get that out of the way. I don't use that. Now another thing I recommend you do is this menu here is called. They have two options for it. They have standard menu and classic menu. Now whenever you see something like that says classic, it means it used to be that way all the time. Somewhere along the line in the updates of Quicken, they revised that, but then probably got a bunch of complaints and gave you an option to see the classic view. I think when you're just starting, you should put the classic menu on, because what it does is it gives you access to every single feature up here in this menu. What you're going to kind of notice is they moved a bunch of the stuff that you would find in this menu down here in this menu. So if you went back to standard menu here, you'd kind of get some of the features up in here, and then the rest of the features you would sort of access in here. I think, though, again, it's helpful just to put on classic menus and have multiple ways to get to features, at least for a little while until you get used to it. Inevitably, I ended up kind of sticking with standard menus and do access a bunch of things here from these points. But with this setup, you can access both. Now this menu here, you can customize as well. If you go to view, it's called the, they're called tabs. And right over here, it says tabs to show. Currently, they're all on. Depending on which features of Quicken you use, you might not need all these on in the end. So you can say turn them off here, some of them off here. I'm going to keep them on for now to go through them. But you can't get rid of this bar if you wanted to or not. So, okay, so just going through the menu up here, file menu, you know, all your basic functions. This is where you would do copy or backup your file. You can restore, validate, and repair is a feature where if you have any technical issues with your file, you can usually clear them up using that. You know, other basic features as well. Now, in here, file import, the one you would probably only use is Web Connect, and most accounts with Quicken, you're going to connect to the bank and you're going to download directly from the bank. If you have, some banks don't allow that. It's called Direct Connect. Mostly banks that don't are very small, like credit unions and things. But some of them, if they don't allow Direct Connect, do allow you to download transactions in a Quicken format, and that would usually be in the Quicken Web Connect QFX format, and you can download a file to your desktop and then import it and import your transactions that way. I mean, if it were me, I'd get a new bank, like, because that's just a bunch of steps I don't want to deal with. But you know, it is a workaround. And then, you know, you can print stuff. You can print checks in here, just like you can in QuickBooks. There you go. So edit, you know, is basic editorial functions, what you would expect, preferences. But the other thing, the one thing that's in edit that is like, I don't know why it's in here. I think it should be in the tools menu, is find and replace. And find and replace is a extremely handy tool in which you can locate transactions through the various fields, and then you can do things like recategorize, retag, and do it in a batch format. So that's a very professional level tool there, and I use it all the time. Now, there's also a tool called recategorize, which looks exactly like this, but it only gives you the options to change a category. Once I figured out what find and replace was, you don't need recategorize. So I don't know why they have both, but I think they should just put find and replace over in the tools and get rid of recategorize, but that's me. View, obviously, that helps you to customize the view of Quicken and what menus you see and various things like that. Tools is a general category where, or menu, we're going to have access to the kind of back-end functionality, I guess, like the category list, the tag list, the security list, which is a list of like stocks if you're tracking brokerage accounts. It has the recategorize tool, which, as I said, looks just like the find and replace, and you pretty much don't need recategorize if you just use find and replace. One-step update is like you updating all your accounts at the same time with bank connections. Memorize payee list is as Quicken tries to help you do this faster. It memorizes transactions you've downloaded and where you've categorized them and tries to replicate that. That's a list where you can access those and edit them, delete them, whatever. address book calculator. Password vault is as you add a bunch of accounts in with credentials, user and password credentials, it saves them in a password vault, so you can then just do a one-click update and it goes and draws all your passwords from the password vault, so you don't have to like enter them every time. So basic tool stuff there. Home is like your dashboard view or main view. So like now we're kind of getting into how these menus mimic these menus. So home is usually what the page that you open to when you start Quicken, and it does here like a standard dashboard that shows you like little kind of widgets of basic information. Some of these are helpful. A lot of these I find not to be helpful because I gather most of the information I need through reporting. But there are some things that can be helpful. You can also customize your own view of this. What I do is I literally only have, I think, let's see, bills and income reminders in my view. I get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that, and then I have net worth, which shows like an ongoing graph of your net worth right there. So this is my customized view. Obviously this file has no data in it, so you don't see anything here, but that's what I do, and you can customize your basic dashboard. Then you move on to spending over here. Spending is basically going to give you a snapshot of your transactions and how they're categorized and a summary of your categorization spend. And as you can see, if I go to spending here, this tab comes on. I don't find the view of this very helpful because, again, I get all my categorization information through reporting. But if you wanted to build a snapshot and just quickly see how you're spending your money in a month, you could do that here. Income is, you don't really have that up here. It's a place where you can sort of enter your bills. You can Quicken offers a bill pay service, much like you get through and so you can enter your bills, you can pay your bills right out of Quicken. I think it's adding ACH payments to bills, which is really handy and something even banks don't do. I mean, banks kind of use Zelle now, but this doesn't have a corresponding menu up here. And the funny thing is in my home view, if you remember, I put a bill and income reminder in my home view. So like in my case, I just have my bill and income reminder here, and I go to the tabs to show, and I'll take this one out, So again, like basically Quicken gives you multiple ways to get to the same feature, which I think ultimately is a good thing because it allows you to kind of customize the way you use the software that makes sense for you, and then you can just get rid of most ancillary visuals, Okay, moving on. Bills and income, we talked about that. Planning. Planning is another word for budgeting. So they used to call it budgets. I don't know why they call it planning now, but I guess that makes sense. So again, you can get to all those features from here, but you can also get to most of them probably in this sub-menu here. Ultimately, the heart of planning section is creating a budget. So if you create a budget, you can do it month by month, annually, kind of full budget style. And then once you have a budget in there, you can do reporting where you have a profit and loss with a comparison against your budget. So it's actually pretty handy. I used to use the budget, but I find for me, I just like doing a budget in a spreadsheet, and I can sort of compare the two easily, and like taking the extra step of putting my budget in Quicken, I don't know, just a lot of time, and I kind of stopped doing it. Though I'll probably end up doing a video where I set up a budget in Quicken and show you how you can use it. And I guess it was beneficial for a while, but I'm just so used to tracking all this stuff. I try to reduce as much time from the process as I can. But once you do a budget, there's also this debt reduction features, which basically show you how you can pay off your loans faster. Lifetime planner, which I've never even used. That's kind of a new feature. This says like long-term planning. So there's just like tons of features in Quicken. I mean, I've been using it for over 20 years, and I don't use nearly all the features. But I think probably some features speak to some people and not to others, and you use the features that most important to you. But I like the fact that there are lots of options, and Quicken is, it's a really deep program, and it's definitely professional level in my opinion. I kind of, I guess, generally call it prosumer. The only thing ultimately, well, I'll talk about this when we get to business. So next is investing. So that would be this menu here. And basically, once you start your brokerage accounts have transactional level detail if you use the complete setup, which I talked about in the video where I set up those videos. And what I mean here, I'm going to give you a quick example. Like most of the other accounts, the register is just like a basic check register. But in brokerage, you actually assign you have the option of a ton of different brokerage level transactions. I mean, this is an example of the things that can be tracked and how they can be tracked. I mean, it's like, crazy. So if you do complete tracking of your brokerage, you're going to literally have every single minuscule transaction. You can when you sell stocks, you can assign the lots, you can short sell, you can put stock splits in here, you can, I mean, it really tracks things well and then assigns all those transactions to reporting. But you can do an overview of your investing here under here. And I mean, I think you can actually analyze your investments in more detail in Quicken than you can on your brokerage website. You can customize this view. Like once you have stocks and stuff in here, you'd see your holdings under here. You obviously can customize the way it all reports. You can do portfolio X-ray, which I've never even done, but it goes out to the web and examines your portfolio. There's just a bunch of different ways you can view the performance of your stocks, and so you can design the way that works for you. And again, I like that about Quicken because I can like design a way that works for me, and the way that's beneficial is that it takes me not a lot of time to like look at and digest the info when I'm ready to do that. Whereas most other programs, the amount of customization you do is very limited. So that's investing, and get there from here or here. Property and debt. So the way Quicken basically thinks is the property and debt section really should be like personal property and debt. So it's like, it might be your residence. I actually track my residence under rental property because I consider it an investment, and I sort of track it the same way I consider my other rentals. I track it as an investment with me as the tenant, essentially. But some people wouldn't bother to do it that way. So you might have your own house under here, but you can create asset accounts for like anything that's of value. Your cars, jewelry, art, gold if you have a bar of gold or something like that. Which actually one of my clients does have a bar of gold, and we have it in Quicken. So that would all those accounts would show up here under property and debt, and they're really kind of I guess as far as Quicken's concerned, sort of personal. But if you watch that other video about how the accounts work, like the accounts are ultimately agnostic, and really you just put labels on them. But anyway, you'll see your net worth in here. Your essentially assets minus liabilities. You can have a breakdown of your property and any loans against them, and you can sort of organize this in any way you want. Then there's the business tab. So the business tab is going to look at any accounts that you have labeled under the business section. So, and that could include checking accounts, credit cards, brokerage accounts, assets and liabilities that are business specific. And here it'll offer a variety of ways for you to quickly summarize that info and display it to yourself. Again, I don't use this because I just have my reporting set up such that I can see all my business activity in the way that I want through reporting. So I don't really need to ever look at any of this stuff. But if you like the way some of these display systems work, then you can do that. Rental property is obviously just that. It's kind of intended to manage your rental property. And not only does it give possible overviews, just like, or summaries of the value of your property and all that sort of stuff. You can, generate P&L reports out of here that are specific to real estate. Again, I've set up my reporting in general to encapsulate all that. So like, and I'm going to do videos on my reports and show you how I do it, but like I have one report that shows you my entire like business, personal expenses, real estate, income and expense all in one giant report, all organized in like a beautiful way that makes it really easy to get a snapshot. So I don't need to do these windows. What I can say though, if you manage your own rental property, the rental property tools of Quicken are very deep. Like not only can you have your property in there and the loan, you can have your tenant information in there. You can have your leases saved in there. You can have reminders set up, like you can, the amount of ways you can sort of track your real estate using Quicken is like, it's like a full-on property management system if you want to use it that way. Again, for me, a lot of my rentals were managed by a management company and I just got the net, and they dealt with like a P&L for me and all that. Obviously I would look at that and I would actually still track a lot of it. But like they had all the leases, they had all the tenant information. And for the ones I manage myself, which now is down to like one, it's just not even worth the extra hassle of entering all that. But if I had like 10 or 20 units I was managing myself, I would probably use all these tools. Truth be told, rental property used to be its own version of Quicken. There was Quicken Home and Business and Quicken Property Management. They merged those two kind of prosumer versions into one, and so that's why the rental property tools are so robust. But again, you can get to all of them from here, and in some ways I think the menu up here makes it more clear what options are available to you. Mobile and web now is like, I think I've said this many times in videos, Quicken is what I call like a legacy program. It's been around for so long. It was originally built as a system to use a database file. So it still does use a database file, but now they've made it so you can sync that file to the web and then you can access all your data from a web portal or your phone, and you can do most of the same things in there you now can do in this. But I think eventually they'll just move the whole thing to being web-based, but I'm sure taking a product that was originally built for desktop only and doing that and maintaining your users all at the same time is challenging. So I think it's happening. But this is where you can turn your sync on to your mobile and web. But again, all that is probably under here. There's not that many options to it. But and then even with that, you can do that under preferences. Under Quicken ID and Cloud, or I'm sorry, mobile web, right there. So multiple ways to do the same thing. Now, one thing that is up here that's not down here is reports. So to me, reports is like the whole purpose of doing Quicken. Quicken's just a database program that aggregates data that you put in, but it puts that data into a useful format for you in reports. That's where I get all the valuable information, like how have things gone? Like what have I spent money on? How much have I made? How much have I spent? Have I actually saved money? Have I not? Like where did I spend money? All that sort of stuff. All those questions are answered in reporting. And really, they give you tons of report options here. I honestly use like 2 or 3 of them over the years. But you can set up the reports that make the most sense for you. And if you are running your business out of here, some of the reports, extra reports for like income by customer or expenses by vendor or something like that, obviously would be helpful. But ultimately, the cash flow report, or AKA a P&L, is like the main report that I use. One thing I will say is like if you're used to QuickBooks or something like that and managing business books in QuickBooks, now QuickBooks doesn't do nearly as many things as Quicken does. You can't have brokerage in there. It's hard to track real estate in there, a whole bunch of things. But what all business programs do is they do the basic reports of your profit and loss and a balance sheet. And Quicken does not do a traditional, true like business bookkeeping balance sheet, because even though it's home and business, it kind of assumes that you're a sole proprietor or like a single member LLC and like you're doing all your business taxes on the Schedule C. It doesn't kind of assume that, like I'm an S Corp, so I have to do my own tax return for the S Corp. But it doesn't assume you're working that way. I don't know why. Like maybe they'll change that because it's kind of silly. So like what would be considered sort of a balance sheet in here is really like almost like a net worth summary, you know. But I have my own balance sheet. I just kind of track in like a spreadsheet because, you know, when I go to like get a loan or something, the bank wants, you know, my P&L and balance sheet. So I do my P&L out of here, and then I have this simple balance sheet that I, you know, just can quickly update. So that is the one major drawback about using Quicken for your business. For all my clients that have, like, you know, consulting corp, so they're the single owner of the corp, whether it's an S corp or a single member LLC, I do it all in Quicken, you know, and I bite the bullet of having the balance, you know, traditional balance sheet in a spreadsheet. If they have companies that they have partners in, well, those books I usually do in QuickBooks, and then just, you know, track of their net, personal net profits out of them in Quicken. But anyway, you know, I could do probably 6 videos on reporting. I'm going to do one on how I do my reporting eventually, but this is where you get to the reporting. Now, if you notice, if I go back to standard menu, all of these menus go away, except for mobile and web. I don't know why, and reports. So like tools is not in here, view is not in here, edit's not in here, reports is not here. For some reason, mobile and web is here and here. Like, some things, you know, don't make perfect logical sense, but you figure out the best way that you want to get to stuff, and then you can, again, kind of customize it to only show those things or whatever you want to do. There's other behind-the-scenes customization that happens in preferences. I'll do a whole video on preferences at some point. But that is the bird's eye view of the menus and features. All right, hope that was helpful. Talk to you later.